Hello, everybody. This is Chuck Wiger, State Senator, and I'm very pleased to have with me today from the Maplewood Historical Society, Bob Jensen, the president, and Bill Bruentrup, the vice president. Welcome, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good. And we're going to spend most of our time talking about the Bruentrup farm, legacy of your family, Bill, and we'll reminisce about that and the progress that's been made. Mm-hmm. But Bob, I'm going to ask you first if you could tell us about the Maplewood Historical Society.
Mm-hmm. Well, of course, our main interest is history of Maplewood and of the Bruentrup farm, but what we're finding is that there's not as many people interested in history as there are in the farm itself or other activities. So this summer we've had a wide range of comedians, we've had reunions, family reunions, we've had Santas, Minnesota Santas there for a picnic. So the farm is becoming more like an event center. Of course, as they are there for the event, we also have the exhibits open so that they can view the history of Maplewood. We've got a quite large exhibit about how 3M moved to Maplewood,
yes,
professionally done. So the summer's been very busy. I would say from the 1st of July until mid-August here, it's like 3 or 4 events a week that we have. Some of them are history, a lot of them are rental type events, a lot of them, we have a map exhibit, which is a history-related history of Minnesota.
Yes.
So I could go on for a couple hours about the
Lots
events.
of wonderful activities for people of all ages, and
It is.
So just I commend you for all the efforts there, and people can become members of the Historical Society. And Bill, why don't you mention how that works if you want to be a member?
Well, we have, I think we have what, a yearly membership rate now? Is it $20 for?
12 for single, 20 for a couple.
Okay. And
a lifetime, I believe I have a lifetime membership.
Yes, we've no longer offering that.
Oh, okay.
Because well, we find out our cost for just sending newsletters out, and that we're going in the red because the postage and one thing and another. If we can just email them, we do have a e-blast, you call it, Bob, where we send out the events and a schedule and everything. But
yes,
we're trying to concentrate more on getting yearly memberships and that rather than the lifetime type thing. So.
Oh,
and we find that people get more active.
But it was okay to be a lifetime as well.
Oh yeah, I mean,
it is.
Yep,
You're grandfathered in.
Well, we'll take care of that. So, and you have how many members, approximately?
It's about 105, 110.
Okay.
It stayed pretty consistent through the years.
Yeah. And then lots of people that visit in addition to that for the many events.
Thousands of people.
Thousands, and the history, it matters so much. And Bob, I want to just compliment you on the wonderful historical perspectives that you provide in the newsletters. I always look forward to reading that, and just about the history, and whether it's in the schools or going back to Baldy Lubin, the first mayor, and the fight with St. Paul in terms of the boundary and protecting this area. But you have just a very keen eye for history, and I thank you. I think you've done a wonderful job on that.
Well, thank you.
Avid researcher too. He's spent many hours researching, and you have a love of railroads too, and old roads and that too. So so he's.
Yeah, this is, I call it the Summer of Railroads, because just last week we dedicated the Gladstone Savannah as a historic site.
Yes. Because
of the Gladstone railroad shops that used to be there.
Yes.
And there's a lot of interest in the Vento Trail now to become a bus rapid transit system.
Yes.
So the archaeological sites and history of that trail is being researched, and I'm helping a lot to provide that research. So
well, it'll be top notch. So
thank you.
Well done on those efforts. Yeah. The Bruentrup farm. We first met, Bill, I believe it was about 22 years or so ago, and I was first elected, actually, to the state senate. And I remembered, just growing up, I knew where the farm was originally. And in fact, why don't you tell our viewers about the farm, the dairy farm, what that whole farm, because it was before Maplewood Mall.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
And
it originated in 1891 with the first 40 acres was a wedding present from my grandmother's parents to the bride and groom. And what did it say on the deed, Bob, again, for $1 and the
love of a son-in-law or something like that.
Yeah. That was kind of cute. So, and then it got added on through the years. My father was born in 1900, spent his entire life on the farm, and it grew to 175 acres, and we had 21 cows and horses and the whole works when I was growing up.
And roughly the area, that acreage?
It was 100 acres west of White Bear Avenue, so it was between Lydia and Beam, and then it went back not as far as Hazelwood, but about three-quarters of a mile west from White Bear Avenue. So,
Okay.
and then on the east side of White Bear Avenue was 75 acres, and that was a little irregular shape. There was a piece that went north, and a 10-acre piece that went north of Lydia, and then there was it went along Beam Avenue, but it didn't go as deep as it did on the other side of the road.
Okay.
So
And what went on at the farm?
well, it was basically a dairy farm and crop farm. We sold excess crops, we always raised corn. We raised a lot of hay, and we sold a lot of hay to horse people in my younger years. And we always had grain that we sold. There used to be a lot of chicken farmers around there, and they used to come and buy just a few sacks of oats or whatever, and we'd sell corn. And then in the later years we started raising soybeans as well.
Yep.
So it was kind of diversified. And earlier, when I was very young, I can remember they raised a lot of potatoes.
Yep.
And the basement of the house, we called it the potato cellar, a vegetable cellar. And there was bins down there and just a dirt floor, and we used to stack the potatoes down there and then use them as needed. And Dad used to deliver them in St. Paul, actually, during the winter months and that, So then I can always remember the shelving around there in the vegetable cellar, because Grandma used to have a big garden, and back in those days they'd can everything, from vegetables to meats and you name it, it was canned, So it was huge, and I wish I would have taken pictures of that, in the years, but I unfortunately never did. So that's what I remember about the farm. Grandma lived with us till her death, and I was 10 years old when she died. So I have a fond memory of my grandmother on my dad's side, and my grandfather on my dad's side had passed away when I was less than 2 years old, so I really don't recall him. And my other grandparents had passed before I was born. So, but growing up on the farm, I had a lot of great memories, and saw that country change a lot through the years. When it was White Bear Avenue was just 2-lane concrete.
That's
County
right.
Road D went through, the old viaduct with the snake going through under the railroad tracks, and
No freeway.
no freeway. And of course, that's
No
what
mall.
No mall. That's what opened things up. When my dad was born in 1900, and he started selling land in the early 60s. First of all, when they started putting street improvements in and utilities, and just to pay the assessments, and then later on, it was in the early 60s when he was getting to think about retiring, and my mother was sick with cancer and that, and then he sold across White Bear Avenue, all that, which later became Maplewood Mall. But it took about 10 years, a couple of local people, Mogren Brothers and Dick Schreier, bought that property, and they were actually the ones that sold it to Homart Corporation, the developer. And then the other, it just kind of piecemeal started developing on.
How did your family do in this? Goes way back, but during the Depression, how did your forefathers?
Well, I think they did pretty well. Living on the land, they could raise whatever they needed, and I never really heard any complaints about the Depression. As a matter of fact, because we were located on White Bear Avenue, we had electricity in 1912 when the house was built, because the house was piped for gas, and I remember Dad saying it was never used. They hooked electricity up. And so then in the early 20s, they put milking machines in the barn. Before that, it was all hand milking. And one of the neighbors told me, they updated the barn in the 1920s. And they added a vacuum line and pump for the milking machines and stanchions and cement floor gutters and all that type of thing. So I think I never heard any complaints, let's put it that way. And I think they had a fairly good life. My dad didn't marry until after basically the Depression, or 1933. I guess the Depression was still going. But my mother worked at the University of Minnesota. She was a secretary for one of the professors. So, so they had off the farm income as well. So,
Good.
Yeah, they did well, I think.
But eventually, your dad sold the land, as was done by a lot of farmers, as the metro area developed. And there's the farm suddenly, and this is now looking into the 1990s. And last century, gosh.
Yeah.
And I'm around, we're all around there.
Yeah.
But I was recently elected then,
Yes.
and I remember Representative Betty McCollum.
Yes.
Betty and I had a town hall meeting at Maplewood City Hall, and the primary matter discussed was saving the Bruentrup farm. And I remember you there, George Rosbeck, Shar Wasilek, Carolyn Peterson, and others, and they're passionate. But it was going to be demolished.
Yes.
And the farm. And was there a way where the legislature might partner in the context that this is a historic site, and et cetera, and some land was being preserved through a vote by the city of Maplewood to protect some land about a mile or so away. And then the question was, could the farm be moved, the building,
Right.
to another location? And so what was your plea back then? And then obviously it was successful, but what was the main pitch that you made to legislators?
I think George Rosbeck was really instrumental. He was great at talking.
Yes.
I never forget him, and I think you were there when he came in with the butterfly net, and he said, "I can just picture these kids chasing butterflies through the open space and catching butterflies." And I think George was our best spokesman, quite honestly.
Yes.
He was really a great guy with that. Now, of course, Shar was very active, and Carolyn, they were very two persistent women.
Yes.
I mean, they didn't give up. So
They were here every day, and as a result of the town meeting, though, Representative McCollum and I said, well, we'll put in a proposal to see if we could get some assistance, and I believe it was $100,000, and there would be match. You put money into it, I know, your family and other, the city, a partnership, but where we could preserve this legacy, and it was a vision, or else it was going to be leveled.
Right.
And so for the next 100 days or so, almost every single day we were down here. We would have visitors from the volunteers for saving the Bruentrup farm, and you had buttons and T-shirts
Get here
with
early,
different
sit in the
things.
front row for the hearings.
Yes, always in the front row, and you were tenacious. And Representative McCullum, who certainly is, and myself advocating for the project. And so then it was approved. It was signed so that there would be this match, and then all of a sudden it's not going to be demolished, it's going to be moved.
Yes.
Were you a bit nervous about how that was going to be moved? The
absolutely.
big farm.
The house especially, and when the barn, everybody asks, it's kind of interesting because the house was a bigger job to move the house, a brick house and irregular shaped and, more of a square building. But they often ask, well, how did you move that barn? Did you take it apart? And they said, no, it was moved in one piece, just we took the cupola off the top. We, being the simple movers, took it off.
Simple,
and,
right.
And they did a fine job, I think, and then Carolyn Peterson's husband, Glenn, was still alive then. Unfortunately, became sick shortly after the move.
Yeah.
But we all went up there and kind of laid the buildings out, how they're going to be on a new site.
Yeah.
And it worked out very well because that site was the home of a small dairy farm when I grew up. So that's why we have the nice mature oak trees and the setting that it's in. So
Bob, they found a great place for the Bruentrup farm on protected land that the voters had they said in a vote to the people, we want to protect this area where the new building would go. And over the years, you have really developed a great program. Go to you, Bob, just to highlight again some of the many things that are being done at the Bruentrup farm, and we have some pictures here too with an Eagle Scout and other things. But tell us more about the Bruentrup farm that has been preserved now forever.
Well, when I came into the picture, probably about 2009, I guess that'd be about 9 years ago, they were just finishing up making it publicly accessible. and
Yes.
trying to find what we're going to do with it. We had a lot of empty buildings that through the years, the last few years, we've filled with exhibits, thanks to the Legacy grant, grants from Minnesota Historical Society. So now we have 3 buildings of exhibits about Maplewood history and about the Bruentrup farm. We also rent it out for events such as weddings, family reunions, nonprofits. We have church services pretty much every Wednesday evening throughout the summer, all in the interest of trying to get people to visit the farm, see the historic exhibits, leave a little bit of money for us so that we can start to get a little more away from the all-volunteer that we are today. We did have Nicole de Guzman for about 4 years as a paid executive director. When she left in June, we'll be looking for somebody this fall to take that position also.
She did a wonderful job, but
us volunteers are getting a little bit older and a little bit tireder, and we need some younger blood in there to take over. So,
and you're getting a lot of young people too that are involved. I mean, this was built by the active people in the community, particularly when we mentioned Shar Waslick and Carolyn, the Rosbacks, the
Don
whole
Wiger was
family.
another one that was.
Don Wiegert.
Wiger, yes. I'm
Yes,
sorry,
yeah. Sometimes they get us.
Yeah.
But he has a T there. But
Yep.
The council member,
Yes.
worked hard too.
Yep.
But young people are getting involved too. And tell us about this Eagle Scout.
Well, this is Weston Erickson, who
Weston Erickson, right here. Okay.
Mike Erickson's son, who was very active in moving the farm. He was assistant city manager at the time too, and he helped a lot with this project. Anyhow, Weston did the Eagle project. It's an entrance arbor between the 2 parking lots. We have a eco-friendly parking lot that's grass here that Bob did a lot of research on, and we bought a matting that's to hold the soil down and plant grass in there. So we needed a definition between the parking lots. So you can see kind of here the farm over here. This is going from the grass parking lot towards the farm across the blacktop. So people can see it defined in the evening. Then this is the smokehouse that was on the original. It's a replica smokehouse built with the bricks that were from the disassembled original smokehouse on the farm site that was taken down again by Carolyn Peterson's actually one of her sons and her brother-in-law, who have both passed away. And her wish was to have it put up again. So Carolyn passed away last year, and we took the memorials. She designated the memorials for the farm, and but the memorials from her funeral and her son's, we bought the materials that were required to reassemble this smokehouse. So we're going to use it as a replica. We can't use it as a functioning one. We may just do it for demonstration, but we won't be able to use because of all the sanitary codes and everything. But it's same footprint, same design as the old one. So it's been another project that we've ongoing project. So.
And actually, one of the more interesting things we might be doing in September with the City of Maplewood, City of Maplewood would like to sponsor I'll call it a renewable energy workshop, talking about how there would be incentives for primary residential people to buy solar power. And the city would like to have us give a little bit of a historic perspective of what farmers did before electricity. And one was to preserve meat by smoking. Bill already talked about canning, but we're pulling together an exhibit. It'll be a short exhibit, but how did farmers live before electricity?
Great. And how we all lived.
Yes.
Yes, because most of our history, you didn't have that. So.
Well, the farmers had a little rougher. They didn't have some of the amenities like the city folks had. City folks tend to have city water and a little better fire protection. So the farmers were out roughing it a little bit more.
Great. And there's a website that has activities that are coming up.
Yes.
If you want to go with that, you have a very good partnership, the Historical Society, with the city. Tell us what that relationship is.
Well, we'd like it to be improved a little bit, but basically the city owns the land and the buildings, so they help us out a lot in terms of engineering studies that we need to do. Right now we're looking at regrading the front yard. We have a little problem with the stormwater, which tends to erode from the front yard through the driveway out onto the street. So the city engineering department will help us regrade so that stormwater is directed other than down the driveway and other than onto the city street. Right now we're having a lot of activities with Parks and Recreation Department. So they bring movies and concerts to the farm. We work with the Heritage Preservation Commission for historic research.
Yes.
I mentioned that a week ago we dedicated the Gladstone Savannah as a historic site. That was primarily the Heritage Preservation Commission that sponsored that. But we provided a lot of the research and a lot of the support for that activity.
Great. Well, Bob, as president of the Historical Society, thank you so much for your efforts. And I know it's consuming most of your time now, especially with Nicole's departure and filling in many roles. So thanks for all that you're doing. And Bill, thank you, and to your family for helping this be a key part of helping Maplewood residents
You have to
remember their
mention,
history.
This is my grandson working on the smokehouse here. He
Okay.
came one day and he had to lay some brick for it. So
Well, it's good. He's smiling. What's his name?
William,
Okay.
long line of Williams in the Bruentrup family.
William.
Well, we alternate.
Okay.
My dad was Herbert, and I'm William, and my
Okay.
son was Joe, and so we alternate first names and back names or second names.
So he's actually the 5th generation of Bruentrups to be working on the farm.
Well, that's what a wonderful legacy for your family and to continue sharing. Any final words you'd like to share with us, Bill?
No, except it's been a great ride, and I thank you for all you did to get this thing off. Without you and Betty McCollum, we would. Well, there's a lot of key people, but without your bill in the legislature, we obviously would have never taken root. So every time I go back there, I always think it's like going home to me. So
Yeah.
I love going back. The buildings are laid out as they were on the old farm, and it's been a great. And my family certainly enjoys it too. So
Great.
and it's a joy to see other people enjoying it as well.
Sure is.
People come and have a good time and that. So yeah.
Bill Bruentrup, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Your legacy, Bob Jensen, keep up the great work. We appreciate it. And viewers, support the Historical Society. Get out and visit the farm. Bring your friends. It's a great experience.